Call the Workforce Development Finance and Policy Committee to order. First on the agenda is minutes from April 17th. Chair Becca Fenn, have you had a chance to review the minutes?
Yes, I move the minutes of April 17th.
All those in favor of approving the April 17th minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The motion prevails. And then next is the minutes from April 19th, 2024. Chair Becca Fenn, have you also had
I think Vice Chair Brand's going to move those ones.
Vice Chair Fenn, have you had a chance to look at the April 19th minutes?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I've looked them over, and I would like to move adoption of those minutes from April 19th to 2024.
All those in favor of approving the motion for minutes from April 19th, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. First on the bill that we're hearing, the only bill we're hearing, I hope the only bill that we will for the rest of the year, is House File 5363. Representative Frazier, you will move that House File 5363 be re-referred to the Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law Committee. And I believe you have an A6 amendment. Our staff is running up to grab it, but if you want to go ahead and explain it.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have the A6 amendment that I'd like to move. And then I also have an oral amendment to that amendment as well. The A6 amendment essentially will provide a lot of technical clear-ups and clarifications for this paid family medical leave bill. And let me start off to say before that is that we did an incredible thing last session when we passed this bill. We are joining 12 other states in the District of Columbia that have put this in place for folks that are living in those states. That has been a great safety net for individuals when they have to take leave, that they will have the ability to come back to that job and also have the ability to have resources to ensure that they don't go into financial ruin. That's a really good thing that we did here in the state of Minnesota. We're joining other countries that have been doing this for a long time. And I just want to make sure that every chance we have the opportunity that we acknowledge how important it is and how great of a thing it is that we did by putting this law into place. And as for everything, when we start a new program, we've now hired a new director, and we are learning, and we are making clarifications and modifications to ensure that the program will run as effectively, efficiently, and as smoothly as possible and do exactly what we intended for it to do, and that is to ensure that we are helping out Minnesotans as best we can when they are in a time of need for themselves and for family members. So I just wanted to put that on the record before we get into a discussion of the A6 amendment. And with that said, I would like to invite up staff from DEED. Hey, perfect timing.
Did you want to do your amendment first, or you want Dee to do the presentation first?
I'll allow, are you referring to the oral amendment?
Do your amendment.
Let me do the A6. I'll let Dee walk through the A6.
Okay. All right.
And then I will do the oral to the A6.
All right. Sounds good. Welcome to Committee, Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, pleased to be with you. I'm Matt Verlek, Commissioner at the Department of Employment and Economic Development, and pleased to be discussing paid leave updates. Is it okay if I start to go through the initial slides, and then I would invite my colleague Evan to proceed from there? And Representative Frazier set the table very nicely in terms of providing context for what we're talking about today based on the great achievement of the last session. And as we have engaged in a great deal of outreach around the state since passage of that law, we have, of course, always reminded folks that the start date is January 1st, 2026 for the program, and there's a lot of work to happen between now and then. So in some ways, small businesses and others that are wondering what they need to do now, we tell them that with that start date, just being aware of it is important, and there aren't specific concrete actions you need to take. But we at DEED have all kinds of concrete actions we need to take, including what Representative Frazier mentioned of hiring a director and building out a team And just to somewhat humorously, but also seriously note how we appreciate the value of each minute and day that passes. We have a countdown timer in Deputy Commissioner Rowe's office that tells us how much is left, and you can see as of today, 617 days, 10 hours, 29 minutes, and 50 seconds. That's out of date now. What we want to cover in the agenda here, first, why paid leave, and we'll be brief about that because that is mainly the debate that has already concluded. Then we'll discuss the components of delivering a paid leave program. Thirdly, what we have done to move those balls forward. And fourth, the proposed legislation. So just at a very high level, as you can see and as you all know very well, the notion of paid leave is to ensure Minnesota workers have access to paid leave, partial wage replacement during those key life events so that you don't have to choose between caring for yourself or a family member and some financial security. The fact that it's partial wage replacement means that it will provide that safety net, as the representative mentioned, but without providing an opportunity for people to prefer this to working. And then it's also important to note that workers have employment protections when taking leave so they can return to their position. And we also know that paid leave programs in the other states that were referenced and other places tend to result in higher loyalty on the part of the employees. They return to their employers at higher rates than in circumstances where you don't have leave, because if you have to take leave and you don't have authorization, you don't have PTO or something like that, then it amounts just to a separation and you lose those employees. So why paid leave? As noted, this has been done in other places, and we see lots of benefits. As I just mentioned, employee retention, and most importantly, probably, is the better health and development outcomes for children and higher labor market attachment for women and labor force participation in general. And you see in the map the other places in the U.S. that have programs. And then finally, greater economic security for families. And with that, we would move into the next phase, which is describing the components of setting up the paid leave program. And with your permission, Mr. Chairman, I would invite my colleague, Deputy Commissioner Evan Rowe.
Welcome to the committee, Deputy Commissioner Evan Rowe. Please state your name for the record and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, my name is Evan Rowe. I'm Deputy Commissioner for Workforce Services and Transformation at the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. And I will try to give you a thorough but brief summary of ways in which the department is working to deliver this transformational program for Minnesotans. So really just at a big picture, what do you need to do to deliver a paid leave program? We kind of break it out into three buckets: communicating, that's talking about program information, paying the benefits, and then collecting the premiums. And each in turn is a significant amount of work, but we're really excited to be doing it. When you're talking about communication, you're talking about things like a program website, social media channels, content management, and how do you manage your relationships with your customers, both inbound and outbound. When you're talking about paying claims or paying benefits, you got to take in the claim, you have to collect the information from medical professionals and the other required entities under the law. You have to adjudicate those claims based on data. You have to pay claims. You have to take calls and questions from applicants and do so in a timely manner. You have to manage appeals from applicants if they disagree with the decision from the department. And then you have to ensure integrity through every single step of that process. And it's similar, but slightly different on the premium side. You're collecting wage detail records. You're calculating the premiums due. You're collecting the premiums. You're managing the various components of the bill, like the seasonal worker exclusion and private plan records, as well as the small business relief grants and premium reductions. And then we're also going to be taking calls and questions from employers and ensuring integrity through every single step of the process. And then you have to tie all those things together. You have what we might call an integration layer. For example, benefits depend on your wage detail records and the seasonal worker status and the private plan participation. Communications have to be informed by what you're doing in the rest of the program. So this is trying to summarize a lot of complicated and exciting work that we're working on, but using, I guess, Microsoft Word art and boxes to do it rather than systems diagrams. How are we building it? We're starting with the milestones. Really the first 18 months of milestones are employer focused. That's delivering wage detail, private plan administration, employer notifications, and some of the seasonal worker exclusions that are included in the law. So that's where we're starting, because that's where the first deadlines are. One highlight we wanted to note for this committee is that we've already started to deliver. We've started the work to deliver wage detail reporting, which begins later this year. And the way that we're doing that is adapting an existing system rather than creating something new. The unemployment insurance system, is well supported and trusted by employers, and and the legislature was intentional in the way that they defined the law, so that wages are identically defined between unemployment insurance and paid leave. They're not identical populations, but the wage data is really important for us to accurately pay benefits. So by leveraging an existing system, we're cutting down on administrative overhead. We should be making it easier for employers to do the right thing, and that should make for a faster time to delivery and a better customer experience for all Minnesotans. And I think we've gotten good feedback from our partners in the employer community on this decision. How we're delivering, we're really starting with some of those initial system components, what we might call the integration layer and employer side services, just given where the deadlines in the bill are. We're currently procuring support to deliver those components, and we're using the scope as an opportunity to learn more about the vendor community and interest, and we're using agile and modern product management methodologies to rapidly deliver value and start making this program a reality for Minnesotans. And this is this is really just kind of an example of the difference between traditional between traditional kind of waterfall IT project delivery and an agile approach. There's lots of boxes, so get excited. The historic, the classic waterfall method is very sequential. You do your requirements gathering, then you do design, and then you build, and then you integrate, and then you test, and then you deploy, and only then, at the end, do you have like a working product that whether you know it meets the needs or not. And that's really the first time you check whether you're building the right thing. But user needs aren't always fully understood at the beginning. So what you really should do, and what modern agile methodology suggests, is you should try to do shorter cycles of all those pieces, and then you deliver. You deliver something small, and then you do another cycle, and then you deliver something bigger, and then you keep checking and testing and iterating, and then you're ultimately able to get to a better product at the end that is both faster and more accurate. And in terms of how we deliver, we're trying to learn from other states. And I would just say that there are good things about being the 13th state in the United States, and farther down the list in terms of countries worldwide. What we're able to do is learn from innovations and improvements that each state is rolling out. Each state is advancing the state of the practice in its own way, and trying to avoid pitfalls from other states. So just in terms of the work done to date, first we're starting to build a team. We have Program Director Greg Norfleet here in the audience. He joined us in September from Massachusetts, where he was the Deputy Director for Operations in their paid leave program. And we've already onboarded a strategy lead, engagement, operations, product, and project management support to be able to get this stood up. And we're interviewing a whole bunch of roles with a bunch more to come. And I want to call out our partners across the agency and across the enterprise, and our partners from other states, where we really are trying to learn from what works. And this is just a nice little picture of the team as March 6th. It is already out of date. There are many, we've got more folks on board now. I also just wanted to call out stakeholder engagement. We've conducted, I'd say, over 50 engagement sessions over the past several months with a diverse group of perspectives across labor and advocate community, employer and business community, equity and access, our state partners, safety leave partners, healthcare providers, and third-party administrators and insurance industry. This is a program that touches all parts of the state, and we are trying to be intentional about doing outreach and listening and learning from what stakeholders have to share. We've delivered a brand for the program. This might seem, it's pretty basic, but we've tried to be really intentional about even a decision like this. It's paid leave. The reason you do that is it translates really easily and clearly. It's brief, so it's unlikely to lead to a bunch of acronym soup, so we can just call it paid leave rather than PFML or something else. And I just note, I spend a moment on this just to note that we're really focused on making the program legible and easy to understand, and that this is a start to that. We've launched an initial website. There's more to come there, hopefully in the coming days. We're sending a monthly program update newsletter to stakeholders with over 2,600 subscribers. We've initiated the rulemaking process, and we've done substantial work on process mapping and design. And one other thing that we have done since the bill was passed was complete an actuarial study. So the 2023 paid leave law required completion of an actuarial study by October 31, 2023. After a competitive procurement, Deed selected the firm Milliman to provide the analysis. Milliman is a qualified independent actuarial firm that has conducted analyses of state paid leave programs or potential programs in a number of states around the country. And the analysis was submitted to the office of the Legislative Reference Library and to chairs on October 27th of last year. Just a little bit of, since in this committee and others, there were discussions about comparative methodologies. I just wanted to take a moment to talk about the difference between the methodology that was used for the fiscal note versus the actuarial study. As you might recall, the fiscal note leveraged a tool called the Worker Paid Leave Usage Simulator, or the Worker Plus model. That is an open source tool that was provided by the United States Department of Labor. That uses census, ACS PUMS data, survey data, and program provided input to model benefit usage. We based many of the parameters, as you might recall from the fiscal note, off of Washington State's extant program at the time. It's a projection. The actuarial study from Milliman uses experience data from a variety of sources, including other states and proprietary sources, to model expected benefit usage. Rather than kind of a micro-simulation individual level model, it does a population level view of expected benefits. Just to summarize the differences briefly, it is also a projection. In terms of recommendations, the actuaries recommended, the actuaries noted that current law targets a fund balance of approximately 40% of program expenses. The actuary notes that funding policies in other states target surplus level, and from target surplus levels reported by insurance companies from short-term disability insurance products are closer to 25%. And we've noted that those claims tend to be relatively predictable over time. By reducing the target fund balance from 40 to 25%, initial premiums in the first few years can be lower than the long-term run rate while initial claims come in. Another recommendation from the actuaries was that we adjust the future rate setting approach to either conduct a regular independent actuarial analysis to set the rate, or to adjust the formula to target a percentage of program expenses ratio of 25%, as noted in the previous slide. That would provide greater predictability regarding premiums and smoother rate setting overall, particularly with adjusting the target fund balance. I get apologies to the House. I have the Senate file in here rather than the House file. But the proposed law adjusts the rate setting approach to require a regular actuarial analysis for rate setting. We can speak to the rationale and why that's in the bill if members have questions. So that was my super fast run through some of the work to date, and then I would welcome any questions, and of course then turn it over back to Rep. Frazier for the proposed legislation.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. Representative Frazier.
Mr. Chair, before that, I would like to propose an oral amendment to the A6 to get the bill in the shape that I like it for this committee.
Okay, Representative Frazier is proposing oral amendment to the A6 amendment. Can you go ahead with your oral amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My proposal would be on page 1, line 16, delete everything after week. And then on page 1, line 17, delete everything before the first comma. And then on page 2, delete lines 4 to 19. That is the amendment.
Okay. All those in favor of the oral amendment, say aye.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, could I ask, but I couldn't hear the back side of that. I'm sorry, Representative
Yeah, I can read
Frazier.
it. On,
Page 2, and maybe just tell me what your amendment is doing.
yes, on page 2, delete lines 4 through 19. What the amendment doing is it is removing a section related to the first week that would have allowed for required individuals to use a certain amount of their paid time off.
I see.
And I mean, yes, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, again, we can accept your amendment as you're doing that, and we'll talk about this more, because I know this was a pretty major change from before.
Correct.
So we can talk about that after we approve it, Mr. Chair.
Representative Frazier,
That is the amendment, Mr. Chair.
any discussions on the oral amendment? Chair Beckerman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm just wondering if we could just restate the full oral amendment, just so we have everything correct on the record, please. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll restate the
Representative Frazier.
So what we did was on page 1, line 16, we deleted everything after week. On page 1, line 17, we delete everything before the first comma. Then on page 2, delete the lines number 4 through 19.
Vice Chair Brown. Chair Beckerman.
Thank you, and just to clarify, it's on line 116, it's the second week, not the heading.
That's correct. It is after the word, after paid week, delete everything after that.
Okay. I see research is nodding for the record.
Yeah. Are we clear?
Yep.
All right.
Vice Chair Brown.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and to the bill author. Are we also, I see your intent here. Does the second page 2.27 also need to go then as well?
No, I don't believe that needs to be removed.
Vice Chair Brown.
Hold on a second. Okay, all right.
Representative Frazier.
I stand corrected, Mr. Chair. After consultation, I will also like to, as a part of the oral amendment, I would like to delete lines 2.23 through 2.28.
Any further discussion on the oral statement?
Mr. Chair, may I would like to check with nonpartisan just to make sure that I'm doing what I need to be doing in the correct manner.
Mr. Chair, Representative, so I believe if you remove, the only changes are on 2.27 and 2.28, and then there's an effective date.
Okay,
If the intent is for all of that to be removed, then I would say the oral amendment is on page 2, delete section 15. Or delete lines 21 to 32, and on page 3, delete line 1. Either of those would work.
I will follow the guidance of nonpartisan staff. That's why they're great at this.
Lee Baker.
Mr. Chair, Representative Frazier, I get what you're trying to do too. It looks like a pretty substantial fiscal change to maybe what we are looking at as far as from the actuarial study. I think that they use sort of this first week unpaid for a lot of this. Does that, in your mind, I mean, when you're taking these things out, does that affect the outcomes of what this is actually going to cost based on what the projections are that Deed has testified tonight as being? What changes about this that you're making right now with the oral amendment?
We plan to get, thank you, Mr. Chair, Lee Baker, thank you for the question. We do plan to get an updated fiscal note, and what I will say is that there will be further conversation around this particular element of this bill, and so we may have language to replace that at some point, but we will get fiscal notes to represent what is being changed here, and we will share those.
Okay, thank you. I want to note I understand it. I think it's pretty remarkable here, but I think it does change the fiscal outcome quite a bit, and I know this is still moving, and
Yes,
we're
right.
still trying to figure this all out, but I guess I understand. I just wanted to make sure that we recognize pretty substantial change here, so thank you.
Any further discussions on the oral amendment? See none. Nonpartisan committee staff is authorized to make any technical changes necessary to reflect the will of the committee. All those in favor of the oral amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
The motion carries and the oral amendment to the amendment is approved. Now on to the amendment. Representative Frazier. as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Many of the changes that are in this amendment are technical in nature. The modifications are designed to ensure that we have, as I stated in my opening statements, effective and efficient program. And I will open it up for any questions from the members.
Discussions. Seeing no discussions? No discussions.
For this here, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
This is for the amendment. I'm sorry.
The amendment, yep, sorry.
On the, on the A6 amendment.
Yes, okay, just on the A6 amendment. I have nothing further right now, no, I'm sorry. I just,
Okay. All those in favor of adopting the A6 amendment as amended to the amendment, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
I,
Motion carries. The amendment the A6 amendment is adopted. Now on to the A3 amendment. That is Lee Baker.
yeah, that's mine, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to try to find my paperwork here. Thank you. And to Representative Frazier, the A3, and oh, that was cute. The A3 amendment, as an employer myself, I guess I'm kind of used to working under the unemployment insurance model of when an employee requests something or gets a hit on with the deed, we get notified.
That's right.
It's really nice. This also kind of does the same thing in reference to that. So that the employer will be notified within a certain number of days. I think I threw in here 5 business days, hoping that you would see this as, pretty reasonable and effective, and would like to see if we could add this to the bill to make it employer, at least if something's happening, we're aware of what's going on behind the scenes.
Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Baker, thank you, and I don't find this as something that's, hostile toward the bill. This actually came up, I believe, in the Senate
did.
hearing, and we are working on language to address this, and I will share that language with, I'm going to ask that we don't accept it now, but I will share the language with you that we're working on to address this very issue, to make sure that notification happens.
Okay. And,
Lee Baker.
yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And to that, again, I hope that we're involving other folks like me and other employers about this too. I think there's a certain number of days that we certainly would like to have. I appreciate you being open to that, Representative Frazier. It's important we get this right. And as your opening statement has been, and Mr. Rowe's statement as well, is that this is monumental legislation. This is changing a lot of stuff here. And we need to make sure that we get it right. And you've got 20 months basically to figure this all out and to make it roll out properly. So with that, if you're committed to working on this, I'll withdraw the amendment. I just want to make sure that we are engaged in this conversation. We want to not be hostile to anything because it's the law now. But we need to make sure that we can do the law and roll this out properly without having, colossal IT systems fail us that we've been used to, right? And we just don't want it to happen again. But these are important little things that add up. So I'll withdraw the amendment, Mr. Chair.
Lee Baker withdraws the A3 amendment. The next amendment is the A4. I believe that's Representative Nelson's amendment. To your amendment, Representative Nelson?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'd like to move the A4 amendment. And the, under the, this bill, we would be moving the notification date. Originally, it had been January 1st of 2027. And this here, we'll be moving it to November 15th. And what I'm asking with this amendment is really being able to move that back to August. When I'm thinking of, planning a running business, setting budgets, November 15th, small businesses, they're probably okay with this, but when we start looking at local governments, a lot of their stuff has to be set back in September, like towns and townships and stuff like that. And if they're going to have to be setting levies, if they have employees and stuff, they need to be knowing those numbers earlier. And so my request would be that we we would just move that up a couple of months, and if we could, and be able to just really allow for planning.
Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Nelson. Again, I believe this one came up as well, and we have been discussing this. Part of what I understand is that we are trying to align, when I talk about the efficiency piece, also not to create duplication and burdens on our businesses, is that we are aligning it with the unemployment program, because that is the time that that information goes out, those notices go out. I'm going to let Mr. Rowe speak to some of this, but I do believe there is a mechanism that allows for the information to be posted publicly for people to have it without changing the date, moving it back to August. But I'll let him speak to that, but that is what we're considering, to make sure that they have the information they need with proper time to make adjustments if necessary.
Deputy Commissioner Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative. Yeah, exactly as Representative Frazier said, I'll offer a couple of points that I think will be helpful for employers on that front. One is that we do an annual mailing towards the end of the year relating to UI rates, and we would rather than send employers sending 2 different envelopes and 2 different mailings, something that can get lost. We'd rather kind of try to consolidate those timelines so that they're aware of it all at once. The other point I would just note is with an annual with an annual actuarial analysis that the bill provides for, the actuarial reports provide forward-looking guidance and projections, and these are going to be public reports that will be filed with the Legislative Reference Library and others, so that much as a company might provide earnings guidance, the program will, the actuarial study will provide what you might consider premium rate guidance for future years, so that employers have a sense of what is likely to happen in the coming years. So that's kind of the thinking behind the timing there.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you. And Commissioner Rowe, if you could, when are kind of the public reports available now? I know you said there's a mailing that comes out with UI mid-November sometime. Do you know when they are available?
Deputy Commissioner.
As contemplated for the paid leave law, I don't think I would expect that we'd be doing the analysis well ahead of we'd be doing the annual actuarial analysis well ahead of, any sort of mailing, since it takes some time to prepare those items.
Representative Nelson.
Well, I think, I appreciate the conversation and looking at this, and, I think that's, we're able to look at it, and I think Representative Frazier, you're working on it, and you know that this is kind of an issue, and I also appreciate, having the one mailing, because I don't think anybody likes getting more mail than they necessarily need. So, I appreciate that, and what's that? Yeah. Okay. And so I think Lead Baker, wants to share something. So,
Lead Baker.
Mr. Chair, thanks. So I guess I'm a little concerned about your response to that, Commissioner Rowe, only because, again, unemployment insurance has been obviously around for decades. We are very familiar with that stable program pretty much. Unemployment insurance rates on basically the employer's actions or layoffs or no layoffs kind of a thing. So I'm used to that. What I'm not used to is paid family medical leave. I'm sorry, just paid family. I got to get used to that now. So what I'm maybe asking then is maybe the department ought to move up the November date now with a very stable program up, so that our cities and our counties, our school districts, our folks that really do have a large payroll, that they need to know how this will be stabilized, at least for the first first 5 years or something, so that we can not be shocked by again, let's just say it's the middle of November. I mean, let's just think about our counties and our school districts that have these costs, they try to have them baked in, but if there's all of a sudden a pretty sharp increase, and they only have 6 weeks to really identify that with the new fiscal year, I hope that the request that Rep. Nelson's trying to make seems reasonable with a brand-new large program like this, that we even take it up to that. And maybe just, I don't want to take a lot of time here tonight, but maybe, Representative Frazier, you could just take a date, and because again, this is still all very fluid. This can change later on. And I know that you want to work on this some more, but I hope that you might just say, you know what, let's move it up a couple months. Let's do something at least on this, and maybe for a couple years we do get 2 mailings. until we stabilize this thing. Because that is a very short window of time for our government units that are going to have to absorb these costs when we might need to tell them earlier on that. Not that it's not different than UI, but it is different because it's new. So is that something that we could urge you and to try to really move this? Because these are two different things, and just to save the mailing isn't probably enough in the first couple of years until we kind of get this thing stabilized, because we obviously have two very different versions of the Macmillan report and the deed fiscal note. They came out much different. Initially, $200 million is a lot. In year two, we're looking at about a 25% increase with no changes. So we've made some more changes today. I'm just suggesting that until we get this program kind of stabilized, that you would consider and taking a friendly amendment or a date that you might see maybe 30 days before this. But I just want to see that we're willing to work on those kind of amendments, because I think this is a very reasonable amendment to just bring that date up a couple months. Representative Frazier.
Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lee Baker, Representative Nelson, I don't also see these as hostile either. And so I'll go back and we'll check in some more with Deed and some other stakeholders, and we'll look at that date. I won't accept it today, or we'll ask folks not to accept it today, but I can give you my word that we will work on it and see if there's something we can come up with.
Thank you.
Representative Brand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Comment to the question. The first comment I would have is that, I think going back in time when I was a city council member, we set the initial levy, but it's the final levy that really counts. And so I think that you can start higher in an initial levy and go down, but you can't go up later on. So I think it's really interesting that we, as city government officials, at least in the past, we have to consider these things. My question for the agency is this. Is there any reason that we can't start emailing or having a website dedicated to specific issues? Because I think at the end of the day, it's an incredible amount of resources, and I think also being financially responsible, that maybe we start getting away from mailings. I hate to say that, because I know I want to keep the Postal Service going too, but at the same time, I think emails are just as efficient. So any response to that?
Deputy Commissioner Rowe.
Mr. Chair, Representative, thank you for bringing that up. I think the legislation uses the word mailing, since there are, I think, certain legal requirements about what needs to be sent over mail versus electronic communication. But I would certainly say, as we're working to set up the program, we aim to use all relevant communication channels, including the internet and email. So I appreciate that comment, and know that as we're designing as we're working to get things set up, that is absolutely the type of tool set that we'll want to use.
Representative Harder.
Thank you, Chair Zhang. And thank you, Representative Brand, for mentioning that about city councils, because that would also apply to counties as well, where we do set a preliminary levy. And the county that I live in, when I was a commissioner, we try to set it at a percentage that would end up probably being close to the final. So we don't do that leeway of, say, 2-3 percentage points in case something comes in. So, and other counties might do the same way as well. So if the funds that the county needs to put forward towards this benefit, if it's higher than what the preliminary levy is set at, well, then the county or whatever jurisdiction will have to look at other alternatives, probably the use of fund balance. People sometimes know that maybe a reserve, but we use it as fund balance, and those are the overages that counties reserve in case of an emergency. So looking at that date would be very important. Thank you.
Any further discussions on the A4 amendment? Representative Nelson.
I thank you, Mr. Chair, and I thank you, Representative Frazier, for the conversation. And I think this is something that we need to work on a little more, and I think you realize that, and I think all of us know that there's some more work that needs to be done. And at this point, I'd like to withdraw the amendment.
Representative Nelson withdraws the A4 amendment. I believe you also have some testifiers for today. Devin Bruce. Welcome to the committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. For the record, my name is Devin Bruce. I am the Director of Legislative and Political Affairs for the Minnesota Association of Professional Employees, a union representing over 17,000 state professionals across all agencies, boards, and commissions. I just first want to thank Representative Frazier for his oral amendment to the A6 amendment, and also to the committee for their commitment and recognition of the impact that a three-tiered system would have on workers across all sectors. We stand committed to also helping deliver the promise that was made in coalitions that we had worked on for years, that 12 weeks of paid leave is 12 weeks for everyone. And so we thank you, and we hope you can support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bruce. Next is Brad Leto. Good evening and welcome to committee. Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Brad Leto, Secretary Treasurer of the Minnesota AFL-CIO. And my testimony will now be much briefer. Thank you for the amendment. I just thank you, Chair Zhang and members of the Workforce Development Committee. Obviously, as I mentioned, this amendment changes are substantial, and so, but I just want to be clear that the Minnesota AFL-CIO unions, community organizations support 12 weeks of paid leave as was passed last year, and it's not an issue of politics at all. It's just that, you know, what was mentioned, you know, passed last year, and also the first week of medical leave is vital for all Minnesotans, and you know, not just labor, but other, you know, all people in Minnesota, and you know, we stand ready to work with any legislators, anybody else on this to find if there's needs to be solutions as mentioned on some amendments here and the bill itself, because you know, just Minnesotans need to care for a loved one all the time, whether it's a child in the hospital or yourself, or heaven forbid a disease befalls any one of us. And thank you for your time, and also thank you, Representative Frazier. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Testimony.
Thank you. Representative Frazier, do you have any other testifiers?
No, I believe that's it.
That's it, okay. On to the bill. Any further discussion? Lee Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got a number of questions, and I can take my time and go to different members if you want to. You're not going to just want to hear from me, but I just trying to get our understanding now that, again, the officials at the department have had some time to look at the bill and kind of look at how do we roll this thing out. Initially, Representative Frazier came to us with an amendment that you sort of gutted, and I'm kind of curious as to taking out that first week. I believe was probably intended by the department to try to keep some costs in line. And again, maybe this is more of a question for the department than it is for you, Representative Frazier, but because again, I think what I'm seeing is having that first week unpaid at certain levels and certain requirements for that is, I think, around some of the very robust paid time off programs that currently exist in a lot of places, not everywhere. But again, especially like the unions have done a really good job to negotiate for these kind of PTO times off, and they've got very robust. The state of Minnesota, agency folks, we have very high levels. Our counties are actually quite concerned that the 12 weeks is on top of what was already sort of planned on PTO off for again, over the years to build these up, because that was kind of the intention that when a family wants to take a number of weeks off for family bonding or whatever it might be, this was what it was for. And this doesn't exist in my company that robust, that high of a level. But I guess either to you or the department, why did you propose it and then take it away? What's the methodology in kind of thinking that through, if I could ask that?
Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lead Baker, I thank you for the question. What I'll say to that is that similar to what I've said to the amendments that you all brought today, I think there's still room to have conversations around what these final modifications are going to look like. We brought the initial language with those conversations still ongoing. We're at a point now we believe there needs to be further conversations. I wanted to remove that to allow us the space to have those further conversations. The initial bill and the intent has always been to have 12 paid weeks, and so we want to make sure we have a conversation to make sure that we can have language in the bill that addresses that, but also takes a look at the fiscal impact that that will have overall and down the line.
Lead Baker.
So with that fiscal impact, then, you're by the amendment, the oral amendment today, too, it's going to likely raise the cost significantly to the program. And my question might be then to either you or to the agencies, when will we find out what this cost is so that we kind of know if this changes the Milliman actuarial study quite a bit? Will we do another one here quickly because this is maybe a substantial change? I'd like to know what the plan is right now to get a really good idea about what does this mean now for changing in the fiscal plan.
Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I can commit to you, Lead Baker, that I will be working with Dee to get that information, and then we will communicate with you.
Lead Baker.
Okay, well, you know, I've asked for a number of fiscal requests from DEED, and I'm not getting anywhere for the last 4 months, 3 months myself. I'm asking for some fiscal notes on, you know, just ideas about what would it cost us if we took out the small employers. There's no surprise here that many times last year I was asking, hey, let's exclude employers under 20 employees. Let's just cut them out. Because they're really small companies. They're getting started. I've asked for a fiscal note. What would that cost this program to not have the payments going into the system, but also not having the premiums or the claims going out? What does that cost? And I've been told they don't have time to do that. They don't have the ability to give us that information. And yet, I just think it's important that we legislators rolling out this massive program should kind of understand, would that save money or would it cost money? Well, we don't know, or they're refusing to get us that information. Maybe if I could ask Mr. Rowe or Commissioner to come back, I'd like to get that answered, because that's something that's been a frustration for someone like me, trying to make sure that I ask questions ahead of time so I'm ready for these kind of discussions. But when I asked the fiscal note months ago, I got information back that it wasn't very high on your list of things to get done. So is that, to Mr. Rowe, Mr. Chair, is that something that you know what that cost would be? Is it something that you've seen the fiscal note and said, we don't have time for this? Help me understand why this was a challenge to not get that back to me.
Deputy Commissioner Rowe.
Mr. Chair, Representative Baker, thank you for the question. My understanding is that there was an unofficial fiscal note requested. However, there is a bill that was introduced, and that bill has not been scheduled for a hearing, and accordingly a fiscal note for the official bill has not been requested. Naturally, during the course of the legislative session, we have to prioritize analysis related to bills that are before committees, and that are requested by, Ways and Means or committee chairs. So I guess that would be the answer. We have not, given that there is not an official fiscal note, we have not done that analysis on that.
Lead Baker.
And so to that, thank you, Mr. Chair, and to that, I understand, it would be challenging to get a hearing on this bill. It's been submitted. I have talked to the chair about, hey, when this comes up, maybe we can do this. But I was hoping to bring some information about what this would cost, because that's the first question out of the chair's mouth is, how much is this going to cost? And so my request was unofficial, and I guess, yeah, you can set them aside because it didn't get a hearing. I just wish we had an idea of what this would look like, but we don't at this point. Another question I have, maybe when it comes to the stability of the program, is the fund balance change that you're looking into. Kind of initially going to a 40% kind of a fund balance, getting this program rolling, you want to trim it back to 25%. Likely might save some money. That might be, or at least maybe some initial rollout possibly. I guess, does it make you nervous that you might be running a little thin on the front end of a brand new program, never having been run before? Does that make sense on a brand-new insurance program that you're going to kind of really cut that down to have the money in the bank if the premiums or the claims really kind of blow up? Does that give you any pause, Mr. Rowe?
Deputy Commissioner Rowe.
Mr. Chair, Representative Baker, no, it doesn't. And this is, in part, that's because if you consult the actuarial analysis, that this is largely on target with the approaches done in other states and the approaches done for private insurers that operate similar programs. I think overall, a paid leave program is not cyclical in the same way that that does not vary with the economy. It varies with population health statistics. So I think it is broadly more predictable than other types of social insurance programs. But I think what's the key point here is that we are adopting a recommendation from the qualified independent actuarial firm that submitted that analysis. And so I think we're very comfortable with that, and we think that it provides a reasonable and prudent approach to managing the finances of the program.
Baker.
Mr. Chair. Okay, moving along to maybe some other comments that were made through last year's session and trying to see where things are at today. I know last year a big conversation was around DHS and how do we integrate their Maxis program and their PRISM system, and how will this kind of incorporate into this new build that we're doing with Minute? I think Minute is building the program, I believe, unless you're hiring another vendor. We can get to that. Sorry, you can answer that in a second. But I know DHS had some, not saying they didn't want the program, it's just this is going to take time. And time is, again, 20 months out. I know the ticker is moving. Two questions here, I guess, Mr. Chair, to Deputy Commissioner Rowe. Does any of those kinds of timelines that were given to us last year give you pause? And are you is Minute, or is there another vendor that we're actually engaging in to really build the system up in that agile system that you had earlier described?
Deputy Commissioner Rowe.
Mr. Chair, Representative Baker, thank you for the question. I will say we are confident we can hit these timelines. And what I would note is to the question around how do we deliver the program. We are working in close partnership with Minute, but we will also be engaging with outside vendors to help deliver components of the system as well. And that's generally been the practice across the country in this regard. So as I mentioned in my presentation earlier, we are in an active procurement for kind of integration and employer side services. There will be others to follow. And what I'd also just reiterate is that these timelines are very consistent with other states that have delivered these systems. And I think we're following similar approaches, but we're certainly seeking to learn from what works and try to avoid the pitfalls where it hasn't.
Lead Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, I'm probably more nervous and skeptical than most because I was super involved in the MNLARS stuff. And I don't want to go into that because here's what it was. And I'll be honest with you, because they were working with other agencies and they kept pointing back at each other to say whose fault it was. This is Holy Deeds project. I get that. This is, if you're waiting for Minute to build something, or if you're waiting for DHS to give you certain, I get it. You're still the mothership, if we will, where this has to go or not go. My apprehension is not that we don't have the smart people that can do it. I just know how backed up Minute has been when I've asked for different things, or when things get going, they actually compute how many hours it's going to take. And you're going to have other people to help with that. I understand that. But let me ask you this, though. With the timeline that you set out and the legislation has set out, who has the ability to decide go or no go? At some point down the road, when would that decision be made or announced to be delayed if there is a problem? If something comes up, at what point do you have those off-ramps kind of thought through yet where, you know what, we're not ready on January 2026, or we are, or what does that look like, Mr. Rowe?
Deputy Commissioner Rowe.
Mr. Chair, Representative Baker. So I guess I'll note maybe a couple. I'll note a couple points first in answering your question. I would just first note that the partnership that we're getting from our colleagues at Minute has been truly top notch, and I think that we are working as one team and I think really effectively working hard to as we kind of work through those pieces. Minute has a pretty extensive kind of approach to launch management. And what I would also say is, in line with my previous remarks around agile delivery, if you're doing agile delivery correctly, it's not December 31st, 2025 when there's a problem. You are constantly iterating. You're constantly delivering value, and you're testing and all those pieces. So I think just by nature of the approach that we're seeking to take with this project and leveraging known existing solutions, building a strong partnership with some really talented technologists, and I would just say through our planning process, where I would say we have a very good sense of the roadmap ahead around milestones around those pieces. I would say we have full confidence that we're going to be able to deliver a great product on time. But I would also note that there are rigorous controls at the state enterprise level to ensure that that good technology is what's shipped.
Pete Baker.
Mr. Chair, that's it for now. Thank you. If you have other ones.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Chair Jong. And kind of following Lead Baker and a couple of questions, and Mr. Rowe, maybe if you could explain the agile delivery a little bit, because as you're explaining it, it's like, well, this makes sense, but at the same time, it almost sounds like, you're planning this, you're checking this all the time, and then, it comes down to January 1st. And then it does launch. And so and maybe just help me walk through this. I'm not an IT guy. I don't even pretend to be one. But if you could kind of help me walk through this, because it's, I'm trying to follow along. I mean, it sounded really great, and then you kind of lost me. So if you could kind of follow along, or I'll try to follow along maybe, and help me understand this.
Deputy Commissioner Rowe.
Mr. Chair and Representative Nelson, how long you got? I think we could talk about this for a long time. It's good nerdy stuff. I think what it really comes down to at the end of the day is scoping, having a clear sense of what you're having a clear sense of the overall objective, but then breaking it down, scoping it into, I think what's known as sprints, right? So that you're working through kind of short-term pieces where you're actually delivering value, where you're not waiting till the very end to deliver something, right? You think about a benefits payment system, for example, and you think about the core functionality that you have to deliver, and then you think about the other pieces that go into that, and so you break out the work, and part of what's really important there is that you're engaging with your customers and your users throughout the process, so that you don't have like a development team that's kind of working in a silo off to the side, and then presenting a fully baked cake and saying, well, here's your chocolate cake, but then the user says, but I wanted a pie, right? Like, sorry, I get excited about this, so I'm using food metaphors. I guess maybe I'm just hungry, but I think what the kind of the key point here, right, is that you're breaking the work into smaller pieces. You're actually shipping and delivering real pieces of that, so that you can test and get feedback, and then leverage that feedback to build onto the next thing, and onto the next thing, and onto the next thing, and then basically by the end you have a full product, but you've been validating, you've been starting small, you've been checking often, and then you're iterating on that work. And I would just, I'd offer to you or any of the members here, if it'd be helpful to kind of have a deep dive, off to the side on some of this. We'd be very, we got in Program Director Greg Norfleet. I think we have an excellent practitioner of how this works. He's done it before in delivering Massachusetts' program, and we'd be very happy to kind of walk you through how that goes.
Representative Nelson.
Well, thank you. And I think your excitement is definitely noticeable, and we'd probably all be later for dinner than we are right now if we let you continue too much. But and so I guess helping me understand. So will there be engagement with businesses, with users before the launch, the official launch date of when this is starting, so that you've got. So, I mean, this is a program that's ready to go on, January 1st, 27, I believe is the date or whatever. But so, I mean, that is, there will be engagement beforehand.
Deputy Commissioner Rowe.
Mr. Chair, Representative, absolutely. And it doesn't start in 2025. It starts this year. It's going to start in the coming months, honestly, as we start to deliver some of the employer side functionality. And I will note, as part of our stakeholder engagement, as we've reached out to the various groups that represent a lot of these stakeholders, I think we've gotten a lot of excitement from folks in terms of providing test users. It is absolutely at a core of our strategy that we will be engaging users, committed and testing early and validating our assumptions. And when we get stuff wrong, fix it quickly and then test again and iterate and iterate and iterate. So I think that's really at the foundational philosophy of the way that we want to deliver this.
Representative.
All right, thank you.
Representative Ryer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you for being here. It's my turn to ask nerdy questions because I am a retired Agile product owner, and so I know. And so I have just a couple of questions to build my confidence with the timeline. I guess first of all is I'm assuming yes, but for the communicate, pay, collect streams, you'll have different Agile teams, different product owners, different groups working on those? Is that accurate?
Deputy Commissioner.
Mr. Chair, Representative, yes, and we're hiring too, so,
Representative Ryer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm a tad bit busy, but thank you anyway. One of the things I just want to talk about is another benefit of Agile is that you learn as you go. And when you do the traditional approach, especially on a larger project, the environment changes, the needs change, technology changes, and then you're really stuck. But with Agile, you're keeping up with all of those things. My last question, though, is so much of whether or not something works is related to the user experience. Do you have user experience research built in?
Deputy Commissioner Rowe.
Mr. Chair, Representative Wright, absolutely. It's again, it is at the absolute foundation of the way that we intend to deliver this program. I mean, the best way to find out what our users need, whoever they are, whether they're an applicant, whether they're an employer, whether they're a healthcare provider who's going to be providing the information that allows us to validate the benefits, ask them and talk to them and learn from them, and we absolutely are. We are absolutely like this. We think this is a critical function.
Representative Breyer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So it's an iterative process. You design something, you show it to them, you see if it works, you build a prototype, you see if it works, meets their needs. Okay, thank you.
Any further discussion? Lead Baker.
Sure, thank you. And maybe just a couple more questions, and then I'm done, I think. Commissioner, Commissioner Rowe, do you need this bill to pass to keep moving forward with your work? Because, and again, I say that only because things are kind of awkward today across the street, and we don't know exactly what's happening this year right now with some things. I'm just wondering if this didn't pass, does that slow you down? Does it make it harder for you to get the clarity that maybe you need to move forward? I just want to ask the honest question about does this need to happen in whatever passes, whether Representative Frazier accepts some of our amendments later on or something down the road? Do you need to have this to move forward?
Deputy Commissioner Rowe.
Mr. Chair, Representative, I mean, the answer is this bill is a top priority for the administration, and it is important for us to clarify many of these technical items. I think it's, so So, yeah, I would just say that we think that the passage of this bill is very important.
Thank you. And finally, Mr. Chair, and, again, last session, we heard the committee and the presenters, and I think back then it was Representative Richardson who was carrying the bill. A lot of comments were made how this was very doubly conservative planning. We want to be very conservative, doubly conservative, in fact. That was used many times. And now that we've got information today that we didn't have then about the fiscal note, which again took a long time to get back to us, and again, I'm grateful for the chair here to bring us back late in session to make sure we could look at this. Then we've also had the Milliman report come actually in October of this year. The two didn't line up as closely as I had thought they would have. Now, some people call it a rounding error. Some people call it not a big deal. I kind of think, the goal was set out to be 0.7 of our payroll, right? 0.7 is our goal. And it should be, I think, in rule, that's what it should be. It came back in year 2, it's going to be 0.93, setting it up as it is today. Now, today, looks like maybe that changes it more. In your opinion, Deputy Commissioner, what do you think were some of the issues that caused a bit of that difference, and that the way you said earlier, they're both projections, but they both look at things somewhat the same. Why do you think that was so different in the two reports?
Deputy Commissioner Rowe.
Mr. Chair, Representative, I appreciate the question, and I think part of it does tie to differences in methodological approaches, right? Again, I think the micro simulation model, as was discussed in this committee last year, uses individual level modeling data. We based it off of experience data from from Milliman's independent actuarial study in Washington State, and that kind of worked through and provided a set of outputs. I think based on part of the actuarial what the dedicated actuarial analysis that was submitted in October, I do think that perhaps, and I think the actuaries are able to we're able to look at across a wider variety of states perhaps than just basing it off of the Washington program's experience ratings, and kind of roll some of that experience data into their analysis. And I also think some of it does just come down to a difference in overall approach. So that would be my sense of it, and I think now the committee and the legislature and policymakers overall kind of have two sets of analysis.
Thank you. And again, I know last year I tried to ask this again, and maybe now you've got this model, because Representative Ryer kind of lost me right away when she was asking all these technical questions. I have no idea what you guys are talking about. This is a different language for me. But my language is on averages and average weekly benefits. And how much time do you think this is going to happen? And to me, I was trying to get to that last year to kind of go, where are you thinking on average? Again, we've got a 12-week program up to 20. Not everybody's going to use the max. You've got other states here. Have you been able to, in the last 6-8 months, been able to sort of get a general rule about what you think the averages might be? The average, wage, is it going to be 0.658 of their salaries? Is it going to be average of 8 weeks a year? I mean, is anything like that more clear today, so that sort of people that look at spreadsheets and bottom lines like that can help compute if this seems reasonable or not? Mr. Rowe.
Deputy Commissioner Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative. I guess I would, rather than me trying to interpret the words of some of the in the actuarial analysis, I might actually just suggest that maybe a look at the source material, which covers, I think, a lot of what you're talking about. And if it would be helpful, we can certainly bump the actuarial report in folks' inboxes. I think some of that could be would be helpful and illuminating.
And finally, yeah, and I wasn't sure I found that in the report, and I certainly could have missed it too, but I don't think I saw it there. But I hope that the committee, I know this has got another stop. I think it's going to Judiciary next or something. So we'll have, some time to look at it again. We didn't want to bring a bunch of other amendments like we tried last year. We know this is important to get it right. I have shared with both the commissioner and Representative Frazier, sorry. I've done that before with you. Like, it's Baker-Backer thing, isn't it? It's the same thing, yeah. But I get that, and I think a lot of us want to support it. I mean, I can't support it today because, again, I've got a lot more questions, and I know that there's things that we continue to work on. I would like to maybe meet further on down the road as this kind of moves along. We'll have more chances to make some enhancements to the bill and to make it better. But thanks for bringing it forward. Thanks for answering all the questions tonight. But again, I've got a lot of concerns. I've got a lot of worry that we are going to find this 20 months is going to really fly by fast. And I hope that the leadership is going to know not on December 31st of 2025, but actually 6 months or 8 months or so ahead of time so that there's lots of planning involved. And do we postpone everything? Do we take the time needed? Because I just want to make sure that you take the time needed to get it right. So again, I can't support it tonight, but thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for having the hearing.
Representative Harder.
Thank you, Chair Zhang. So Representative Baker brought up a good point, and he mentioned MNLARS and all the challenges that we have with this system. As a county commissioner, usually I get a phone call, if when's my road gonna be plowed? But I got so many phone calls about this particular system, MNLARS, and the debacle on that one. And so my question, I think, is gonna go to the commissioner. Can you share what you envision, what this rollout is going to look like? And hopefully we can avoid what happened with MNLARS, if I could say that. Use that word, thank you.
Deputy Commissioner Rowe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Representative Harder. I mean, I think without, I think there's been a lot of ink spilled on that project, and and happily, I think the state's in a much better place now with the new MnDrive system that's been set up, and I think that that it's adapted well. I mean, I would just say the way that I think what a lot of it comes down to is, one, making sure that you have close partnership between the lead agency and the Minute group that's supporting the project. I think it's about having clear objectives and a very clear project structure, and making sure that you know how you're going to deliver. I truly think, as we've discussed, agile methodology and bringing teams together, having them work together, having them constantly in front of customers, shipping often, not just waiting until the very end. I think all those pieces are lessons that the whole of state government has really taken to heart from difficult previous experience. And I would say that the team that we're building at Deedon with our colleagues at Minute, I think are some of the most talented state workers that I've had the pleasure to work with, and I think and I'm confident that we're going to deliver something great on time for Minnesotans, and that it's going to be a great experience for everybody.
Representative Harder.
Thank you, Chair Zhang. Thank you for that. And I just hope that as this process moves on, that if we do come across issues, that they get addressed before the entire rollout. Because I'm envisioning that when this is rolled out, that it's going to roll out statewide. And hopefully you put maybe some controls in place that if you see something coming, that maybe you stagger the rollout. I just really would like to avoid the embarrassment of MNLARS. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Oh, sorry, Chair Becker Friend.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as I just checked my business email, we'll also say, folks like the Main Street Alliance and other groups are holding events even now. There's one coming up next month for business owners to log in and get up to speed with where things are at. So I think there are resources out there, and I just thought it was kind of, maybe they know we're sitting here today, but they sent that email out today reminding folks about the ability to learn more via that avenue as well.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, closing remarks, Representative Frazier.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, everyone, for the conversation and discussion. Again, like in my opening comment, this is a big deal. It is a big change. It's something new that we're putting in place, and it's important for Minnesotans, and it is important to Lee Baker's point to get it right. And that's the point of having these committee hearings, having these discussions, and I'm going to continue to be open to have those conversations and make sure we can implement everything we can to make sure we get it right.
Representative Frazier renews his motion that House File 5363 as amended be re-referred to the Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law Committee. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion carries. Representative Frazier, you're on your way to Chair Becker Defense Committee.
Thank you all.
All right, we have no more things on the agenda. And I'm hoping this is our last hearing.
Really?
And if it is, I just want to say thank you to all the Minnesotans who came in the last 2 years to share their stories and helping us find solutions to the problems out there. I also want to thank Commissioner Verlick and your department for being here and working with us, and also Governor Walz. And also want to thank our staff, our Paige, Lydia, Dave Sullivan, our DFR research staff, Casey Peterson, our GOP research staff, Justin Cope, Marta James, and Anna Shalene from our House research team, Ashley Ang from our House fiscal team, our CLA Bonzivu, and our CA Travis Reese, Vice Chair Jeff Brand, and of course Lee Baker for all the wonderful conversations these last 2 years. And I also want to thank Speaker Hortman for entrusting me and putting me in this role to work with all of you to make sure that the things that we did are able to make great impact in our committee. And so that being said, we'll see you all on the floor. Yeah. That means adjourned.